All right, we got 2007 Pontiac Grand Prix 3800 series. Now this thing had an oil leak and it had a coolant leak. You can see all the grime that's on the subframe down below, pretty nasty stuff. And if we take a look here at this oil filter housing, this is where your oil filter screws onto. They have oil pressure switch right here. And they're notorious for oil actually leaking through the sensor body out the connector. And I believe that's what's happening here. Very, very common with General Motors products for some reason. Whoever makes their sensors, if they're made in-house or through a different company, might be AC Delco or Delphi, I can't remember. But they're really bad for leaking through the sensor. So that's where the oil leak is coming from. Now, I didn't have to remove this whole housing piece just to get the sensor, but I did have to take this off in order to fix the cooling leak, which was coming from the front cover, the timing cover. So here's the timing cover here, and it's actually quite small timing cover for a V6 engine, but that filter housing, it just bolts onto the back, or well, the side of the timing cover, and it just sort of hangs out a little bit over the passenger side axle, and it has to come off in order to get timing cover. Timing cover's got to come up and out, so I'll lower it down so we can get a better look at things. There's your crankshaft position sensor. It's buried in behind your harmonic balancer or crank pulley, and the tone ring is built into the back of that. So if you're ever wondering how to replace your crankshaft position sensor, that's what you got to do, is take your harmonic balancer off. I'll actually grab that and show you. So this is it here. That's the front of it. There's the tone ring here. There's actually 2 tone rings, and you'll notice the crankshaft position sensor has like 3 fingers on it that sit in there. And I forget exactly why they have 2 tone rings, but there's a reason for it. To get this thing off, there's actually threaded bolt holes that are in here, and they're kind of small, but you can use, I thought you maybe had to use a 3-jaw puller, but you actually just use a flat puller like this. And this is the size. They're like, I want to say they're like not even M6. They're like smaller than that. Actually, maybe M6. Yeah, M6 by 1.0. That's the thread pitch. So that's that thing. Here's the this cover goes on over that crankshaft position sensor, and this goes on. Yeah, there's we'll lower it down and take a look up top. There's a bunch of bolts. The bolts they have all their own spots. There's like these special bolts with these little studs sticking out of them, and that's so that that plastic round cover can clip on there. And the reason they have this is specifically for the wiring harness. There's a wiring harness that runs along there, or your harmonic balancer's right there. So, you know, wiring harness needs to stay put, and that's how they keep it from getting chewed up. That's all the reason that thing's there for. Let's lower this thing down. Felpro actually sells a gasket kit for that front cover, and it's about $100. But that gives you your water pump gasket. There's your water pump here. It gives you this is your front cover, and the front cover gasket that goes in behind, and then you get a crankshaft seal for your harmonic balancer, or crank seal. And then also they give you that oil filter adapter housing seal as well. And yeah, all the seals that you need, which is fantastic. yeah, your power steering pump, it just kind of bolts like down there. It actually bolts onto the head, not the front cover, but I moved it out of the way just to have some room to get this thing out. So actually where it was leaking with the coolant was just underneath of this neck here. And there was so much rust and corrosion, and also the coolant itself became really acidic and caused a lot of that rust and corrosion, but it actually heaved the front cover off of the block enough that it's just started leaking really, really badly. And yeah, GM likes to use Dex Cool coolant, and that stuff gets really acidic and nasty for gaskets and metal surfaces over time. And a lot of people don't flush their coolant or do the maintenance, so all of a sudden you got this nasty coolant that's in there, and it just eats up all the gaskets, intake gaskets, any gasket you name it gets eaten by this coolant. So Dex Cool, flush that stuff. Like honestly, I say every 5 years flush it. It's totally worth it, just flush it. But yeah, we put a new water pump on here. This thing was like 40 bucks, pretty cheap, but the old one had some play in it. It wasn't leaking yet, but whatever, put a new one on. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The intake, there's a lower portion and an upper portion. I removed it just to have good access to get this cover out. I don't know if you can get it out without pulling the intake off. You probably could. I bet you could probably sneak by and get that off, but yeah, I pulled mine off anyways, just to get in there and clean everything. You can see we've got a balance shaft that runs across here. That's this thing. All of our push rods, because this is a overhead valve engine with the camshaft inside of the block, not overhead cam. And yeah, not much to it really, just a bunch of time to get things off. I spent a lot of time doing the intake, wanted to clean everything and put new gaskets in there, get everything cleaned up nice. Like I say, usually you get these gaskets, intake gaskets will go bad, and you'll see it in the lower intake. It'll be all full of engine oil and coolant. It'll be really nasty, so definitely worth replacing all that stuff. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the your ignition module will be here with the 3 ignition coils. That's going to be in your road. There's like 2 threaded studs that go in here and here on the head with a couple nuts and a ground from the engine harness. So that's got to come out of the way in order to get that front cover out as well. So that's about it. In behind that cover, obviously you got your timing chain that links your camshaft to your crankshaft, and a small little tensioner. And there's 2 coolant passageways in the engine block, one on each side kind of thing. And then besides all the main bolts that hold the cover to the block, there's some of the water pump bolts, the big ones. There's 4 big ones. They actually pass through the cover into the block, so they also secure the cover to the block through the water pump. And then there's 3 bolts from underneath that go up through the secondary oil pan. There's like your main oil pan, and then there's like another aluminum housing that bolts to the block. That's like a secondary oil pan housing. So that does not have a gasket, it just gets siliconed on. So that's pretty much the details of what's going on here. So I thought we'd just make a little show and tell video in case you got to do a front cover seal on a GM 3800. Not much to it. Got any questions, throw them in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.